Welcome back, everybody, to 3F, Faith, Family, and Freedom. I'm Bobby Allison.
I'm Mateo.
I'm the psychologist, and he's the theologian. Today, we wanted to talk about some of the latest in the debacle that is taking place in Afghanistan, the vacuum of leadership. And I think what we're seeing essentially is the result of an emphasis on meaningless cultural wars, cultural changes. You see this woke culture that's erupting, and the de-emphasis on those important Judeo-Christian classical American values that hold us together. And I think what we're seeing is essentially the vacuum of that, or a vacuum of leadership, because of that focus on these meaningless anti-Christian, anti-God, anti-American new fads that we're seeing in the woke culture. It's so bad that our Joint Chiefs General Milley, recently was more concerned with white rage and what that means than he was on the drawdown in Afghanistan. I mean, obviously they all dropped the ball. Our military establishment is toast. I mean, we can't trust them anymore. Our leadership dropped the ball. I mean, they're letting people die. Thousands of Christians that were converted in the last 20 years are exposed. A lot of them are probably going to perish. I mean, God willing, something will happen to where we can get in there and swoop in and save them. But I don't know. It's going to be scary to watch. But I think we all need to watch. We all need to read and listen about what's going on, so that we can inform ourselves, and so we can see the juxtaposition between what happens when you have a vacuum of morality, and then juxtapose that with what we've been accustomed to as this Judeo-Christian model, which assumes strength, protection, honoring your neighbor, valuing your neighbor, and the opposite of that is what we're seeing in Afghanistan.
3F is a psychologist and theologian providing a much-needed commentary on the three most essential elements of life: faith, family, and freedom.
Yeah, and so really this vacuum of leadership, there's technically people in these leadership positions on the American side, but it's such poor decision-making, such poor choices and judgment, such a lack of wisdom, that the end results are almost akin to had there been a total leadership vacuum. It's a right. Vacuum of wisdom, strength, good decision making,
this is so avoidable. I mean, we had control of the country. They could have made plans to draw down gradually, get the Christians out, get the people that are State Department officials, support people, those types of people out, such that soldiers were left and those can be extracted easily. Instead, you see this quick withdrawal and this quick takeover by the Taliban that just caught them flat-footed. I mean, all of our generals were saying that they expected this, they didn't expect this. It was quicker than what they seemed, but then they had prepared for it. They're all over the place. They have no idea what's going on. And so it was they definitely had choices, and they chose to stab these people in the back.
Yeah, and speaking of those choices, Biden in his speech to the nation, or press conference to the nation, whatever you want to call it, when he finally came out and said something, he tried to pin this on President Trump and a deadline that President Trump had set. Mm-hmm. And anyone who's just listening to that and is uninformed, and especially if they already have a negative attitude towards Trump, they're just going to jump right on, this is Trump's fault. But then what President Trump recently said in an interview is, yes, what you said, that there was an order to do it properly, that first you bring out the Americans and those Afghanistanis, what's the right word?
Afghans.
The Afghans that helped us and were loyal to us. You get the civilians and citizens out first. He said, then you get the machinery out, because we've left tons of military equipment and technology that can be used to kill innocent people around the world.
Helicopters, guns,
Oh,
artillery.
to these violent people,
Yeah.
these violent people. And so he says, first you get the civilians out, then you get the military equipment out, so that it can't hurt other people in Taliban hands. Then you bring your military home. And when it's laid out that way, it seems like just any common sense should say, yes, that's exactly how we should do it, which makes me question, what was Biden thinking when he just pulls the military and leaves all the equipment and the innocent civilians? That's the most important
Right.
thing.
Babies, young girls.
Women, yes.
They're going to be raped or worse, And, it boggles the mind. I mean, I feel like I prepare more when I go on a vacation. I feel like I prepare more to secure my house. Like if you're going to go away for a long weekend or something like that, you want to make sure the doors are locked. There's nothing, no lights are on to catch fire, whatever. Some you don't want to leave the toaster plugged in, whatever it might be. You take precautions. You actually think about where your vulnerabilities are and what could go wrong, right?
Absolutely.
I think every that's not just a first world problem. I think a lot of people that do anything in their lives make sure that they secure their belongings before they go anywhere, correct? And it just didn't occur here. It just boggles the mind, the lack of leadership. And I think that we know what to blame for that. I think this woke culture, this woke ideology, this cancer that's been eating away at us gradually. It's been eating away at the church. It's been eating away at our politics, at our morals, our values here in America. And I think this is where you're finally starting to see the first, wilting petals, so to speak. And it's just going to get worse from here because this leadership's, for better or for worse, is in place until 2024.
Yeah, no, that's a scary thought. And so the military, from the top to the bottom, you're saying, has just been so focused on propagating wokeism, of making sure that they are in line with woke ideals, that the focus has been taken so off of what it is to be a military and the purposes, that's one of the major cracks in what's going wrong here.
A couple of months ago, remember when General Milley was up testifying in front of Congress, and he said, he was defending having his soldiers read that horrible book, White Fragility.
I haven't read it, but
don't torture yourself. It's read go ahead and read like a review by Dave Rubin or Ben Shapiro. They get pretty detailed into it, but it's.
But you say if I want to know the garbage they're being asked to read, then White Fragility is what it's called.
White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. I hate even.
And
saying
this is important for our troops to know, apparently.
Apparently so, because Milley was up in front of Congress defending the fact that he wants to know what white rage is. I don't quite know what that is myself. I mean, I assume that it's you or
like
me
when they cancel the Gilmore Girls. Is that white rage?
Or Dawson's Creek?
Or Dawson's Creek. Yes, I experienced some white rage.
I experienced some rage in those moments too. Yeah. I got to get my Dawson fix.
When they changed the theme song of Dawson's Creek on Netflix from "I Don't Want to Wait," I experienced some white rage at that point.
They changed it?
They changed it. But that's
terrible.
That's a topic for another episode or for Patreon. I'll rant on that on Patreon.
But yeah, so he was up in front of Congress saying that because the military actually drew down their troops for a period of time after the whole Capitol chaos situation that was just so necessary to retool our military and to find out who the white supremacists were, whoever it was in our military ranks that harbored any white rage. So essentially they put this book into circulation through the military. I guess everybody had to read it so they could identify who among them was capable of white rage or in fact a white supremacist. I assume what they basically mean by that is who's Republican, who's conservative. Because I think that's, as we've seen with Stephen Colbert this week, conservatism is the new Taliban in America. So that's essentially the play here. What it boils down to is that if you're not a leftist, you're a white supremacist, or you have bigoted views, or you're a bad person, or as they would throw out, you're Hitler or you're Stalin or something like that.
That's the problem, is that they're not actually rooting out true white supremacy. They're not trying to find Hitler enthusiast in our military or KKK enthusiast in our military. It's not real white supremacy. It's what you're saying.
Right.
They equate a MAGA hat. They're actually teaching in school that MAGA is a code word for white supremacy. So like you're saying, it's trying to purge conservatives and Trump supporters from the military, so it's entirely left and democratic.
It's a long-term play. I mean, that's eventually what they'll go for. I mean, they've already played their hand this week with Stephen Colbert getting up and basically kind of trying to defend Joe Biden and his response to Afghanistan this week. He got up and said that, really it's the people on the right that are the ones with these extreme views, and he's like trying to downplay the danger that Taliban poses to the people that are stranded there in Afghanistan. I mean, he's such a toady for the left. I mean, it's not even. I mean, he's long since not been funny, but now he's kind of the mouthpiece. I mean, they utilize all these aspects of our media to turn against us and to further marginalize, protect some of the protective forces that still exist regarding our morals and values. So we see that with them.
And I don't understand the disconnect in, we have a no border policy or an open border policy from the left at our southern border. And the idea is that the humane thing to do, the humanitarian thing to do, is to just open the border and let anybody in without thought whatsoever. So down there, it's human life is just so important that we're going to throw wisdom and judgment out the window for this woke idea of what's important. Well, how suddenly is human life not as important when we're just leaving people in Afghanistan for the slaughter? What's the difference? I'm not catching it. Well, I'll tell you what the difference is. The people flooding across the border, they are pretty sure will be future Democratic voters, illegal Democratic voters, or they'll try to make them legal Democratic voters. The people being left in Afghanistan are not going to partake in our elections to keep Democrats in power.
Yeah.
So that really, I answered my own question to myself as I asked it what the difference is, why they care about, quote unquote, the lives streaming across the border and don't give a flip for the lives that have been abandoned in Afghanistan.
That's part of the answer. And then the other answer is that they're dishonest. They're intellectually dishonest. They're not. It's manipulative. It's all ideology. It's not based on any type of moral strategy, any type of moral grounding. I mean, when your arguments don't transfer, then you have a real problem. I mean, that means they're not tethered to any type of moral strategy, any type of moral backing. As Christians, when we take a stance on something, it has to be consistent. You try not to sin. That doesn't mean that as Christians it doesn't mean we can sin in certain areas but not in others. I think that's a big problem in most Christians' walk with Christ. I mean, we tend to elevate certain sin over others. It's like, well, I'm not. At least I'm not doing this. I might be drinking too heavily, but at least I'm not cheating on my wife. Those types of things. But it's no. I mean that's wrong. I mean, you have to be consistent. Your arguments have to transfer. For much of the left, yeah, they're gonna. We were talking about last time. It's okay. It's wrong to have an ID to vote, but it's good to have a vaccine passport to go to a restaurant. So those things don't add up, or they don't transfer. But that's what the left does. So yeah, of course, let's leave these people because, for goodness sake, I mean, they can't come to this country and vote tomorrow, but the people across the border in Mexico, they can, and they're making steps to do so. It's just, it doesn't transfer. So that's part of the answer as well.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to be glib when I say it, or just, drum up false rage or rage.
Or white rage.
Or white rage. But it really just does confound me how they're how there can be such a disconnect for the lives there while pretending to care so much about the lives on this end. And at times I'm just scratching my head what Biden could be thinking, and the only way I can make sense of it is if I go to nefarious, twisted things like that. Outside of that, I cannot make sense of the decision.
Well, it's got to be of sin, right? Mm-hmm. When your argument doesn't transfer, you automatically, that calls into question the moral backing to any type of moves you're making. So if it's not, if it lacks any moral backing, it has to be of sin. I mean, I think the calculus ultimately is power. So leftists want power. They want to capitalize on what they're perpetrating in this vacuum of leadership, vacuum of moral backing, and then they want to rise to the top and lead this country into some sort of a socialist chaos.
And something I think a lot of people missed during President Trump's time in office. There's been talk that now Afghanistan could become a hub again for Al Qaeda or for Islamic radicals.
In 6 days.
Yeah, in 6 days. But we're talking about that again, and it's a real threat that we're talking about. What a lot of people missed because there was so much hype and pomp and circumstance about false Russia collusion and sham impeachment trials and just so much was always being drummed up that I think a lot of people missed the fact that during Obama's administration, terrorism was running rampant across the world. Islamic radicals were getting in trucks and they were mowing down innocent people in France, in German Christmas markets, in Canada. There was just all kinds of terrorism, and the world was a dangerous place. And ISIS, there was ISIS, and they were growing and they were committing atrocities. And we were just told that this was an inevitable part of life in the time we lived in. The Obama administration just said this is inevitable. Terrorism taking over the world. It is what it is. Now, we could do a whole nother episode on how Obama contributed to that. But the point I'm wanting to make is Trump comes in to office and immediately, for the most part, it just entirely stops. We defeat ISIS. ISIS isn't an issue. I can't say definitively that not a single Islamic terrorist attack happened anywhere, but we weren't hearing every other week, it seemed like, that there'd been another group of people slaughtered here or run over there. The world just became a safer place when it came to Islamic radical terrorism. And even Trump supporters, I don't think we all truly grasped how much better that was. It almost was just taken for granted that, it's not a problem anymore. It was a terrible problem under Obama. It's not with Trump. Put in Biden, and 6 months later, we're talking about Al-Qaeda and radicals, and we see what's happening in Afghanistan. And I think that's something Trump didn't get enough credit for.
There's something to be said about that guy with the itchy trigger finger, that itchy eye, that twitchy eye. You don't know what he's going to do. I mean, if you can, and the opposite is the case for Biden and Obama. You know exactly. Oh my gosh, we've had to deal with Biden for 50 some odd years, and our government hasn't done a single thing. Always been wrong. You can always count on Biden to make a mistake. Obama, very little experience. Obviously, a softie. Didn't really. I mean, just look at the way that Putin. I mean, bringing up Russia. I mean, look at the way Putin handled Trump in those 4 years versus several years of Obama and several years of Biden. I mean, you just know he looks at those guys as patsies versus Trump as this. I mean, for whatever you feel about the guy, he's a strong and unpredictable guy. Predictable from the standpoint of he's successful. He knows how to make money. He knows how to lead, but unpredictable from the standpoint of what's going to come out of his mouth. What's he going to do? Luckily, he was probably the best conservative president we've had in the last 100 years. Well, Reagan was great too, but he but Trump was solid from a conservative standpoint, but unpredictable from a thinking standpoint. No one could quite understand what, and that person is scary to a terrorist. That person's scary to a foreign leader who's supporting terrorists by proxy. They don't know what the guy's going to do. If they make a mistake, they could level us.
I actually have a theory, and I could be off on this. I'm not a political theorist by trade, although we do talk about a lot of politics here. But my theory is that President Biden is so incompetent and so weak, and our enemies, be it Russia, China, Islamic radicals, North Korea, our enemies throughout the world, they know that now, in all of America's proud history, that now she looks down enough that this would be the time to come in and try to just rid the world of America for the rest of time. You strike while the iron's hot. She could get back up and get strong again, but she's down. She looks weak. Let's go ahead and run in and try to kick her in the head while she's down and get rid of her once and for all.
Well, she's worried about what her pronouns are.
Well, what I think is potentially holding them back is the thought that in 3 years, there's a chance that Trump could come back into power, or a DeSantis, and that at that point in time, there will be hell to pay for what they did. That if they can't entirely destroy us in the next 3 years, that Trump's going to come back in, and then they're going to get a delayed butt whooping for what they did. And I think that could be holding people back. Like, wait a minute, even though there's no real leadership under Biden and Kamala Harris, that there's still this chance that a Trump or a DeSantis could get back in. So we still need to be a little bit careful in how we play our cards.
Right. So I think that's why we see China being somewhat measured in what they do, even though they could. I mean, they obviously know Biden's a joke. They didn't fear Obama either. You never fear. That's why you need conservatives. That's why Republicans. I mean, we need liberals too. I mean, we need each other. I mean, leftists, liberals, they need conservatives to lead at the top, to lead in the military, to lead in the places where you want this country to be safe. You want this country to be consistent. They don't fear Obama and Biden. Not that you should solely fear a president, but you should respect the president. Respect connotes fear as well. I mean, the fear of God. We're taught as Christians to fear God. What does that mean? We fear the consequence of disbelief. We fear the consequence of denouncing our faith in Him. So when you look at a Biden and an Obama, you know that they're more concerned with someone's pronouns and someone's gender identity and someone's and the diversity in their cabinet, and whether or not our soldiers are expressing white rage too much. I mean, when you're on the battlefield, if you see a bunch of white guys, do you want them to be calm and collected when they're in battle? No, you want those guys to express a little white rage, but in a good way, in a non-racist way. But I mean, war is in a way racist because you're usually fighting another nationality altogether. But the fear is not, the respect is not there with our leadership now. And, I believe wholeheartedly we will have conservative leadership in place by 2024. It'll be whether or not Trump wants to run.
If it's fair elections.
That's true. Well, we've managed to get rid of a lot of these, we've managed to put in place a lot of voting restrictions.
You think there's enough safeguards in place at this point?
Georgia passed theirs. Texas passed theirs. Florida, I'm sure if we haven't already, we're probably going to pass something. I think Florida was actually a better situation voting wise than other states. I don't think Facebook was able to meddle in our elections as much as they were across the country. But
is this why they're cleaning conservatives out of the military? So when they can't win at the polls and we make the polls clean, they'll just take over with the military state.
That's probably on the list of
on the long game.
Well, I mean that's what they project as what we will do. Correct? They kept saying that is Trump going to use the military? Is he going to declare a national emergency and use the military to shut down the elections? And so, in other words, they're thinking in terms of doing that at some point. Because remember, this is a psychological, the Freudian defense mechanism known as projection. You project onto your enemies or others what you yourself are thinking or plan on doing. For instance, like, a husband is unfaithful to his wife, so he projects onto his wife that she's unfaithful or cheating or dishonest. So that's essentially, that's what they're thinking, because they've projected that onto Trump and other conservatives.
And I agree with what you're saying. Like we said before, the projection, which overlaps with the Saul Alinsky tactic, like we said before, of accusing your enemy of the very thing that you're doing.
Yeah.
As well. And like we said, we know that so Obama plays by the Alinsky playbook, and he's still pulling plenty of strings, if not all of the strings, in the Democratic Party and current administration.
That's why we're dealing with what we're dealing with now. We're seeing the vacuum of leadership in our country, in our military, and Afghanistan. The Christians, the good people of Afghanistan, are going to suffer. Since we've for better or for worse, I guess we've occupied or kept safe Afghanistan for the past 20 years. We went over there. We got rid of we neutralized the Taliban, and there was freedom in Afghanistan for a period of 20 years. Relative freedom, dangerous place, not exactly the freedom that we experience, but thousands of people were able to experience enough freedom to convert to Christianity. So, an upwards of 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 new Christians put faith and trust in Jesus Christ and are still there now, and they're stranded.
And that's a statistic you're pretty confident with, that it's somewhere in that range, 3,000 to 5,000.
Yes, yeah. I've got the statistic. I'll put up on the website where that statistic comes from, or I'll put it up on our Patreon. But yeah, there's an estimate between,
'cause that's an awesome number, is why I asked.
It's a great number, yeah. And it's extremely uplifting and glorifying to God, and in this horrible place that you could have such beauty, such a beautiful faith, because that to me is true faith. When when you're looking down the barrel of a gun and saying, "I believe in Jesus."
Yeah, there's no lukewarm Christians when Christianity can cost you your life. Yeah.
Exactly. You don't see any lukewarm people there, for sure.
Christian in name only. You're not going to find that.
Exactly. So yeah, they say there's about 3,000, 4,000 some odd Christians.
That's amazing.
That unfortunately are known to the rest of Afghanistan. We had under the Obama administration, we had the brilliant idea to give all Afghans identification. And on that identification, again, we'll put this statistic up on or citation up on Patreon. With that identification, you had to declare your religion. So they had to say whether they were Muslim or Christian. So and they didn't want to denounce their faith, so they went ahead and put Christian, thinking that this country would be free for the foreseeable future, so they could exercise their religious beliefs. They had no idea that 11 years later, or almost 12 years later, that the Biden administration would just give up on them.
And I wonder what the thought was behind asking the religion on that. I'm trying to think if there was a practical reason at the time that made sense, or in an area where it can be dangerous to admit that you're a Christian. And it's hard for me to think we were that confident in the quote unquote nation building that there'd just be this security without question that it would be safe for these people to admit this on paper and not just in their hearts. It makes me question what the thought even was behind doing that in such a dangerous environment.
Well, I mean, I don't think we're seeing much evidence for much thought at all.
That's a good point.
I mean, yeah. What we've seen transpire in a period of less than 2 weeks suggests very little forethought. I mean, they're just. I mean, I don't know. The military-industrial complex is over there. spending their money, making their contracts. The government, they're over there nation building all of a sudden. The original mission was to go over there, kill bin Laden, get rid of the Taliban, get rid of their ability to procreate more terrorists or develop more terrorists through the dead zone that Afghanistan was. We accomplished that mission fairly quickly. At the very least, we should have started to draw down after Osama bin Laden. There's a Freudian slip there. So that's two defense mechanisms in one show. Got your psychology money's worth. So yeah, there's just very little thought. I mean, obviously they're flying by the seat of their pants. All they care about is getting reelected in Washington, and all the military cares about is getting their promotion. All Milley cared about was getting his 4th star. I mean, it's just that's why he panders all that white rage crap that I hope he doesn't actually believe in. But who knows?
Yeah, I think what would be neat to do, and whether it's on a standard episode or something extra that we get on Patreon, is to get 2 different perspectives. One, talk to someone who has served in the military in Afghanistan, and just get that perspective. Neither you nor I'm not in the military. Neither one of us has served overseas in the military, right. Not in Afghanistan. If you're watching and you want to be that person, let us know. But talk to someone who served in Afghanistan and get that perspective. And then another thing that I think would be great to do is talk to someone in a mission organization that has done work and might have had boots on the ground in Afghanistan, if that was possible, and kind of get an inside perspective from that point of view on what the strategy and plan is, especially at this point, with all these Christians that have been abandoned, either be they in a missionary context or Afghans that have converted to Christianity. But those would be 2, I think, important and interesting perspectives.
Yeah, I
to
agree.
This.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I mean, I think we should probably, since we've had a few episodes now, we should probably start to maybe throw in a few interviews. I know I also want to get one of my colleagues is married to a man who immigrated from Venezuela just after the socialist, just after Chavez, basically turned the country into a socialist regime. So he'd be the perfect person to speak to the juxtaposition between a socialist framework and a traditional capitalist Judeo-Christian model. Again, that's what this is all about. We're trying to emphasize the importance of the Christian model, the Judeo-Christian ethic, the American spirit, the American model, the Holy Spirit, all those things.
Because I imagine this has got to be pretty tough and difficult too, especially for people that have served in Afghanistan and lost people that they knew personally in that service. Yeah. And to just kind of see it end like this has to be pretty difficult and painful. And we probably should be praying for those people. And if you know them, checking on them and reaching out. Definitely the people in Afghanistan, that's without question. We need to be praying for that, and we need to know how to pray specifically. But war's pretty traumatizing, and to have gone through certain things there. I mean, think about how angry we get just seeing it, or frustrated anger, whatever you might be experiencing out there. But then imagine if you yourself had lost brothers and sisters you were fighting alongside, or lost a limb or something there, and to see it end this way. And I think I've heard some people on TV say you need to focus on the 20 years that, as you said, 3,000 to 5,000 people came to Christianity that might never have happened. Yeah. So that service was so important, if nothing else, just for 5,000 souls in eternity now that might have never come to that if it hadn't been for that. It's
such a disservice to the spirit of our service members, because there's so many people that were motivated to serve after 9/11. So many people that went over there to give their lives to try to keep us free and to see it dissolve in a matter of weeks. It's pretty demoralizing. I know they've done a few interviews or a lot of interviews on various networks. Fox News did an interview with the widow of the first casualty in Afghanistan, and she basically said that it's such a waste and a tragedy what we've seen unfold.
Yeah, no, we need to keep those people in our prayers, and yeah, maybe we'll see if we can get someone either on this weekly podcast or as a bonus on Patreon, but get someone who has served there that we can get that inside perspective.
Yeah.
And really the wokeism in the military, that's such its own topic, whether along with this, it's hard not to completely separate it, like you said, but it's like on one hand, I don't want to overshadow exactly what's going on in Afghanistan, but it does correlate, like you said, but it's worthy of its own topic of what does it do to a military when you try to go woke with that military.
Oh my gosh.
And it can't be good. The entire reason of having a military is to keep your country safe, and you need strength to do that, and to try to soften, confuse, and do social experiments with the thing that's meant to keep you safe just is ridiculous.
That's and no disrespect to anybody, either woke or soldier, but it's kind of an interesting. What does a woke soldier look like? What is a woke soldier? That's an interesting mental picture image.
Nerf gun.
Nerf gun's like, hey Jim, your boots don't match your jacket. Better get back to the barracks.
Or you just send a guy running into enemy territory with a giant BLM flag, and people just start, I just assume
like fashions, like somebody that's woke. I think they're like more fashionably sensible. So there's like so it's like, Jim, you got to make sure your boots match your sweater. I love that parka.
Rainbow colored guns in hand.
Rain. That's not exactly camouflage, but in the woke field, the rainbow is pretty camo. That camo rainbow.
Camo unfriendly, I guess.
Yeah, I just can't imagine being out there. It's like you're worried about woke issues when you're on the battlefield. There's bullets flying. It's like you're worried about diversity. It's like
or pronouns, like you say. That's the last place you're going to be worried about pronouns, is with bullets flying over your head.
It just doesn't make sense. I mean, things have to make sense in life, and this stuff just doesn't make sense. Woke in the military. I mean, come on. It's like you want to be battle ready. I mean, I never served, but I spent some time at West Point, various training and training opportunities, academic opportunities. Spent a lot of time around military people, and there's always just like the focus was on being battle ready, being well tuned, fine tuned to go out and execute the orders of your commander in chief, and had nothing to do with being woke, worrying about pronouns, worrying about gender diversity, although there was that. I mean, the military is the most diverse. It's always been the most diverse aspect of our culture. We've always had, black people have served for generations, even through the Jim Crow era, even through the 60s and 70s when racism was at its peak and the KKK was still alive in the streets. Blacks served before then and after then. Hispanics.
Asians. I was going to say Asian, Native Americans.
Too. I mean, we always focus on black people in this country. We always focus on the black-white issue as being the crux of racism. But yeah, so I bring that up. But yeah, black people have served the country well for hundreds of years.
So roughly, how many years ago, roughly, was it that you would have been at West Point?
In the late 90s.
Late 90s. And you're saying at that time, you didn't get a whiff of this wokeism.
It was still pretty hardcore. They could still haze you. I remember after, like a couple of years after I was there, they dropped all of the more strict hazing rituals that they would do. And I just remember hearing about, the first, transgender people there, and the focus on diversity.
That was during your time or after your time?
After.
Oh, okay.
After. In recent years, I've heard that they've devolved into this woke culture. They're trying much more for diversity and stuff like, which, not a bad thing to have a diverse population at your school, but if it's your goal above all else, then you're losing sight of the fact that you still need to be battle ready. You still need to have a lethal force that's going to go out there and execute well. So I just think it's so counter to what we're trying to do as a military, and it's a disservice to people going out onto the battlefield less prepared because they're reading Robin DiAngelo versus The Art of War for instance. So it's like I think it's just a disservice to our fighting people.
And then it makes me wonder the folks that are trying to get this into the military, who of them actually believe this is a good thing and the most important thing, and who of them are truly just trying to weaken the country and the military for the sake of globalism, like we've talked about. When you get the U.S. out of the picture, the globalists take over. You were talking earlier about the leaders of these other countries not respecting Biden and Obama. Well, part of that is, I think, when they see that they are quibbling over pronouns or sexual preferences and things like that, it clues them in immediately that their agenda is somewhere else and that it's not to protect America at all costs. And I think it clues them in, these guys are just lockstep with the globalist. The reason they're not protecting America at all costs and doing what's absolutely the most rational and reasonable thing to keep America safe is because to them America's not the end game. When America goes, they're still part of the global elite, and America is
some good stuff here.
America is a secondary concern to them.
That requires a little bit of conspiratory thinking or conspiracy thinking, but it's a conspiracy reality. I think. I mean. That's a likely motive that they're pursuing. They've already infiltrated the universities. They've infiltrated our three-letter agencies, the CIA, NSA, FBI. They're all deep state lefties, it seems like, and so why not our military? So if you infiltrate, the military has always been the most popular, the most morally sound aspect of our culture, or as a country. It's always been that just that naturally consistent piece of our country, and now they're trying to infiltrate the military. So once you do that, then you've totally weakened us. You've weakened us to the bone at that point, because that's the backdrop. That's the thing that keeps the world powers at bay. We have such a efficient, lethal fighting force, most dominant in the world, and if you infiltrate that with woke ideology, and then you rot it from the inside out.
Yeah, and please don't be so naive as to think that once our military has been weakened and they're more concerned about wokeism and social justice rather than protecting this nation, please don't be so naive as to think there aren't multiple countries that either by themselves or collaborating with others won't immediately seize the opportunity to come in and get rid of that pesky America, that big Satan once and for all, and get us out of the way. And they're not going to be so pleased with our enlightenment that we have taken away pronouns and everything else that they are going to have mercy on us and let us do our thing because we are enlightening the world with this stuff. They're going to destroy us, and you'll never hear that garbage again because it's coming mostly from us and from America. And don't be so naive as to think we can weaken our military and there aren't people that will be ready to just destroy us immediately.
Well, that's what the woke elite has, forgotten. I mean, they've been so comfortable, so wealthy, so so untouchable for so long that they just assume that stuff's just going to stick around. Like there's no that's why they don't fear or look at socialism as a bad thing. They think that they've gotten so fat and happy that they might as well mess with the idea of the Great Reset and getting rid of capitalism. They don't recognize the fact that we could be taken out quickly. I mean, look at Afghanistan, the period of less than 2 weeks. Things can devolve extremely quickly. China gets aggressive. They partner with other countries, Russia, for instance. That's going to be horrible. Lots of people would die, and I don't care what these. I mean, yeah, these elites might still be safe in their compounds and the Hamptons and New Zealand, wherever all these tech billionaires like to build their compounds and bug out shelters. But the world's not going to be the same after that.
No, but it's because they feel they are, and to a certain extent are so above America. Not just in the elitist, like proud, chauvinistic, we're above everyone else. Yeah. Literally in what they own, what they can do, what their resources are, who they know. They don't need a national America like actual Americans need one, because they exist in this elite orbit that's global with the movers and shakers and the power people.
It's every dystopian that movie or novel you've ever read or seen.
Yeah, that even if this might make them a little bit nervous if the whole world started to go into nuclear war, that starts to limit their options, but just a little bit. These people are so up there that even if the whole world starts to destroy each other, as far as they're concerned, that just helps the population problem in the world, and they're going to be at the top at the end of it. So when you play into this stuff, you're just a useful idiot to these people. And forgive me for speaking so frankly, but it's a dangerous thing, and it's dangerous times right now, and there's people in harm's way in a new way in Afghanistan today. So this is serious stuff.
And case in point, I mean, in the midst of the Delta variant, this new strain that's so much more easily spread and obviously still deadly to a certain extent, is you see Obama hosting this 200 to 500 person birthday party with no masks, just letting it all hang out, and we're all supposed to wear masks, go get vaccinated, follow the leader and follow Big Brother, and yet he's out there partying it up with his celebrity elite friends, and that's essentially what's happening. We're seeing that it used to be they talked about income inequality. Now we have the haves and the have-nots, the elites and the rest of America. So I'm happy to be in the rest of America. Because that's where that's good's going to win out. That's where the Christians live. That's where the Judeo-Christian model is still strong.
So when people see Obama throwing this birthday bash, when they're told they can't do anything close to this, or they see Gavin Newsom or Whitmer, when they see these double standards, those that support those people on the liberal side, I don't understand how a light bulb doesn't go off to say these people don't care about me at all. I'm being used, and I just don't see how the light bulb doesn't go off at that point.
Well, Nancy needs to get her hair cut.
Yeah,
she's.
If I can be a little crass here, forgive me, but how many times do you have to catch your spouse cheating on you before you realize they might not actually love you?
Or you remember that, we got married for political reasons. Bill and Hillary.
I don't understand how the light bulbs don't go off. It's such gross hypocrisy.
Therein lies the problem. I think it's a sin-based issue. Their arguments don't transfer. They're not in this for moral righteousness. They're not in this. They don't have the Holy Spirit within them. They're not going to do so. I mean, I guess that's why it doesn't surprise me. I mean, I get what you're saying. Why doesn't a light bulb go off in the head of these people? I think that's the cancer of wokeism. They spend all their time virtue signaling. Oh, we're good people because we care about your pronouns. We care more about the diversity of institutions than we do the efficacy of institutions. So we're good people, and if you want to be good, you do it too. So what that creates is this cancer on the frontal lobe of your brain that saps the ability for you to see that juxtaposition, for you to see that red flag, And I know so many people, good-hearted people, smart people that have that cancer, have that frontal lobe tumor that prevents them from. It's called the woke tumor. It's like this prevents them from seeing the light, and I certainly hope that it doesn't prevent them from receiving the Holy Spirit. I hope it doesn't get in the way of their faith, because we love we love these people too. I mean, at the end of the day, we want these people to be happy Americans alongside us, living happy lives, bringing glory to God. We don't want to demonize them. We want them to eventually see the red flags.
Yeah, and as you're saying that, it brings to mind when I cool off my frustration, higher
your white rage,
higher when I cool that off.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is white.
Yes. I'm gonna start hitting the table in
General
in a
Milley,
minute.
tune in to see white rage exemplified.
But it goes back to a devotional that I recently put on Patreon. And I know we've been hitting that a lot this episode, but on Pharaoh's hard heart, that eventually, if you harden your own heart, you're going to be given over to a debased mind. And I've got the scriptures on there that speak to that.
Dude, that fits in nicely. That woke tumor is that hardened heart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and eventually you're given over to the debased mind. If you check out the devotional, it's short, it's like 10 minutes, but it talks about how you're doing it to yourself, and that with time it was never God's choice for you and never what God wanted, but eventually God does just give you up to a debased mind. But it's not, that might initially sound cold about God, but it's you who took yourself there, and God allows it to happen with free will, to the point that your own free will blinds you to where you don't even see these things. And so I can understand that on the intellectual and spiritual level, but then when it just keeps happening right in front of you, it just gets so frustrating that it's all intellect goes out. It's just like, how do they not see this?
We see that a lot in our society. We see it in a lot of different ways, that the old idea of the battered wife syndrome, or the battered husband syndrome, since we're so woke these days. So I mean, I think it comes out of manipulation. It comes out of that it's good in the good times. It's so good when it's good that you want to stick around, and when they're virtue signaling, it makes you feel so great that you're such a good person. You're not racist. You're gonna care about all these things, and that the wokesters care about, and that makes you feel so good. So it keeps you there, even though you see a couple of red flags, some blood stains on the carpet, so to speak. That's nothing to see here, folks. Mm-hmm. Check out Mateo's devotional on the hardened heart. I vetted it. There's no white rage that takes place whatsoever. So
it's available at the lowest of the 3 subscription levels. So you can just get that lowest one, and it's on there, and gonna get a lot more on there in time.
Yeah, we're gonna start to diversify a little bit. Mateo's gonna do some devotionals. Talk more about some very specific biblical messages. I think I'll put up some specific mental health content as well. And yeah, like we said, we're going to try to get some interviews on in the near future. Some interesting local people that could really just add to the conversation.
Absolutely. And then I think, to just circle back to, kind of the
Jen
focus
Psaki
of this, to Psaki back, kind of the main focus of this episode is just that we have a leadership vacuum right now. Yes. That with a leadership vacuum, you can quickly see chaos like what we've seen in Afghanistan and things that have been relatively secure, it can be surprising how quickly it falls to pieces, and the importance of good leadership. Yeah. And then tacked into that, the insanity of wokeness in the military, which is also sort of its own topic that maybe we talk more on it at some point as well. Yeah,
I mean that's the crux of what we wanted to talk about today, is just what happens in a vacuum of leadership. How do we get here? And I think that the clear reason is that there's a departure from Judeo-Christian values, American values. We're starting to see the first signs of the results of that tragedy, or that woke cancer. So I hope that we can turn it around quick, but I suspect that we're going to see some more fallout over the next couple of years until we really start to take control, start to take the reins back, and do right by God, and focus back on that aspect of this nation.
And there's a lot of people in very dangerous situations and scenarios right now in Afghanistan, Christian and non-Christian alike, but especially our Christian brothers and sisters, Americans, those who have maybe are not American citizens but have been loyal to America. We need to keep praying for these people right now. Don't let it just be a news story. There is power in prayer.
Amen.
There's an important power in actions and leadership, but do what you can do and pray, because there's a lot of power in prayer, and we can't just complain about it right now. We need to pray about it.
Amen. Well, that'll do it for us today. Please check back with us in a week or so for next episode. Until then, God bless you guys. We love you.
Love you guys.
For exclusive content and bonus footage, please subscribe to our Patreon page at patreon.com/3fcommunity. That's patreon.com/3fcommunity. We'd love to have you join the family.